Just kidding. First of all, welcome to the T.O.P.S.HQ. And thank you for everything that you folks do as track operators and sanctioning bodies to help our business succeed the way it does. Without you, we wouldn't have any of this. And that's part of the reason why PRI took this initiative to create TOPS three years ago, and to give you guys an opportunity, a place to come and meet and greet, but also we've now expanded it into these sessions and meetings where we can get people like minds together, talk about challenges and problems and things that we can do to make this sport better. So thank you for everything you do. Don't forget, after today's session, this session, at 3:30, we have BS and brews going on in the general social area of TOPS and tequila testing, tequila sampling. Well, you can test it too and see if it's any good, but that's going on as well right outside there. You're all invited to attend. It's a good chance to network with your peers in this sport. Today's session is a little bit, I guess I'm going to give you a little background on how it came about. John Stiles, who we'll take it here in a minute, approached us about doing this session, and he'll tell you how it all came about. But I want to thank John for his efforts at putting it together. If we pay attention, we might learn some things, but that's true in everything. And necessarily those learnings aren't always going to tell us the right thing, but they may also tell us the wrong thing to do. So that's part of this session. So John, I'll let you welcome everyone, and then I'll get a little bit of a video.
Well, I'm glad to see that everybody is happy and ready to listen to some people. I think the key thing at this point is that we're talking up here with three people that all are coming from very distinguished families in the world of automobile racing in the United States. These are all second and third generation. And let me introduce Chuck Deery, who is our family representative in this case for keeping the image of Hugh Deery alive. He's going to tell us about how he grew up Deery. And it was a case where his father died a couple of years before he got out of college. So he had to come out and produce and make a living in the image of his father. And Ron Drager, who is part of a family that's one of the most qualified people in this industry to talk about our world of automobile racing. He's currently associated with NASCAR. He took his organization of ARCA and joined NASCAR, and they thought so much of him. They've hired him for what was 1 year, it's become 6 years. So he is a principal in the NASCAR organization, running his ARCA races on an East Coast and West Coast basis. He also, and I was very surprised to hear this or know this, but he still is the owner of 2 short tracks, Flat Rock, which is near Detroit, and Toledo. Flat Rock being a quarter-mile racetrack, asphalt track, and Toledo being a half-mile track for larger cars. But he's still the owner of a short track in addition to being a NASCAR official. So there's an element of that, an element of the connection between a short track racer and a man who through the years, he was the RPM Moderator of the Year or Race Promoter of the Year in 2012.
19 shit.
Well, at some time, yeah, it's a long time ago. But anyway, he's highly recommended, and he's been president of the Michigan Promoters Association from 2000 to the present. So he knows the promotion of automobile racing, both from the short track and from the big major leagues. And Additionally, we have Bob Winnie. Bob Winnie was a participant at the Indianapolis Speedrome as a midget driver for the United States Auto Club. He had a very distinguished record there. He, at one time, did finish 10th, but he decided after a while he was going to take his interest in the automobile racing and buy a racetrack. He's going to tell you more about that, but the key to the whole thing is that his racetrack is dirt, where everything else we were talking about with Hugh Deery, it was asphalt. So realistically, I've heard from a lot of people who heard about what we're going to do today that insisted that some of the ideas that Hugh Deery had wouldn't work on a dirt track. Well, Bob Winnie is going to tell you that not only did they work on his dirt track, but they even worked in the world of baseball because he became the general manager of a minor league team and in the process made some money at it. So realistically, not only being a promoter of the Tri-City racetrack, Tri-City Speedway in Pontoon Beach, that's the name of it, right? Pontoon?
Really from Granite.
Oh, okay. Next. But anyway, Illinois, Pontoon Beach, Illinois, and Granite City?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, he's going to talk about that as well. So we've got three. His father was a driver in the Indianapolis 500. He is a member of the Midget Hall. His father is a part of the Midget Hall of Fame. And he comes from a distinguished racing background, but he's used that theory of Hugh Deery in a lot of other operations, including not only his racetrack, but also his minor league baseball team. So realistically, we're going to hear from three different angles here how Hugh Deery's idea is important for our industry as we take a look at it today. And I think to begin, we have an aspect here of giving you a view of Hugh Deery based upon some of the videos that were recorded back in his day. Tom, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, John, and I apologize automatically that this is going to seem a little bit like we're watching home movies, and we all know what that means, but it also is thanks to Greg McCarnes and Alex Papini, who retained all this video from years ago, but some of it's a little bit bear through us, but it's going to show kind of the way that things were done back in those days. Look at all the bell-bottom pants and definitely looked period clothing. The front entrance was something you'll read about or can read about in the publications. There's a shot of that, the two ticket takers in three-piece suits at a short track. Whoever would think of such a thing.
We would welcome one of the truly great gentlemen in short track racing. He has a few words. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Hugh Deery. First of all, let me say thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming to Rockford Speedway and for the 14th Annual National Short Track Championships. Myself, my wife Jody, our 8 kids, and our 50-some employees appreciate your being here more than we can tell. We don't have time to say it to everybody, but you are truly the race fan, cream of the crop, the cream of American racers fans, and we welcome you here. God bless every one of you. We're going to give you a show here today that you can't find anywhere in this world. I want to thank again everybody that came, and I'll tell you why I'm speaking now. Another reason, we have a 10-to-1 bet that we're going to start at 2 o'clock. We apologize for what we did to you last year, and at 2 o'clock you're going to be overcome with the roar of high-powered engines. We're going to start on time like we promised you. So thanks again for coming, and we hope to see you again next year. Just a word from my wife.
Hello, everybody, and come back again next year.
She was always upset.
The final tradition of this race every year is one that we've grown very accustomed to. We're going to ask Mr. and Mrs. Deery to say those famous words that you hear at every racetrack to get this one going. Ladies and gentlemen, the Deerys together in acapella. What have you got to say? Gentlemen, start your engines!
Yeah, that was me in the blue suit.
Ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, only within 50 miles of the city of Indianapolis can you buy the world's best ice cream. Now, I'm a native of Wisconsin, and I was raised on baby fat and milk. And I thought I knew ice cream, but the world's best ice cream comes within and within 50 miles of Indianapolis, and it's called, of all crazy things, raspberry salad. And my good friend Al Stilly and his kids have just bought me 3 gallons, and I'll see you sometime Tuesday with my belly like this. Thanks for coming, and thanks Al, and thanks Dick. Thank you for putting on one of the best shows in the nation, Mr. Hugh Deery.
Look at that wireless mic. That'll tell you something right there. Yeah, that's easy.
What Dick Noble has here on his body is Nomex underwear. Nomex underwear. Fire-resistant material, mandatory in USAC, mandatory in many places. It saves a lot of lives and a lot of discomfort. 10 seconds in the fire, 10 weeks in the hospital. So this is the stuff that prevents it. Today's got an unusual piece. They call it a head sock, or a baklava, or a bottle of a caca, or some kind of funny name like that. But they usually call it the head sock. Now, the driver will wear it. You'll see it, so the first thing the driver puts on, and the gas man wears it, does he not? Dick, put it on and show them how it is. Then when the race is over, and if you haven't won anything, you can wear it into a gas station and knock a couple of them off on the way home to get some money. Cover up your face pretty good. I just wanted to explain that little thing too.
In case you didn't know, he didn't have much of a filter. You've seen that again. What was that called? The baklava? One of those. It's just a victory lane here of Dick Trickle, who won that event a number of times. There's Dick again. That was Marlon, or Ramo Stott winning it, one of the races there at Rockford. And, Ramo got paid in $1 bills, and they crumpled them all up and put them in a garbage bag and brought that to Victory Lane. So it was kind of a neat, it was probably only $2,000 at that point. Nowadays they race for certainly a lot more money than that. This just shows some of the kind of events that were always put together at Rockford Speedway, from Big Moose, Cholak racing, match smelling, and wrestling, to Leroy Van Dyke, various different events. One of the things that we did in the 70s and 80s is rock concerts, and that's just a quick shot of some of the events that we did there. The biggest one was, what was it, Chuck? 29,000 people or whatever jammed into the racetrack. So that just gives you a quick glimpse as to some of the things that we all experienced in our lives.
For you people who have read some of the excerpts from our Deery book, that Ted Nugent event that he's talking about there in one of those posters was a $100,000 event in their pocket. I have a feeling at this point there are a lot of promoters who would give a lot of money to be able to make $100,000 in one day. But Hugh, among other things, attributed it not only to the crowd that he had, but also the fact that they sold a lot of beer. So maybe that's the story that needs to be thought about at your racetrack. One thing about beer brings back a memory to me, because as I have written, I was an absolutely neophyte as far as running a racetrack. And Hugh Deery was my provider for all the information that I seem to be looking and trying to develop in putting together a racing program at the Indianapolis Speedrome when I bought the Speedrome in 1976. One of the things that I found out from Hugh Deery was that people like to drink beer. And you read in probably in some of the excerpts that he recommends selling the largest possible volume, whether it was a Coca-Cola or beer. He had a 64-ounce bucket called a beer bucket. And he showed us at a meeting much like this that this was something that people really bought and really appreciated at Rockford Speedway. Well, I came home and I bought 500 of these, complete with lids, complete with wire leads, wire covers. Unfortunately, 3 years after I bought them, there were still 420 of the 500 left. The people at the Indianapolis Speedrome didn't want to take that much beer out there. And unfortunately, that was one of the Hugh Deery ideas that he gave me. I still have memories of the fact that not everything he said worked out, but most of the items he did. One of the things that I don't think I have seen in any of the excerpts is a very important piece of information that most people, I don't think, would believe, but he had a statement in which he guaranteed that if you sold popcorn, the box was more expensive than the contents. That stuck with me because that was so important for his operation, and he makes that clear in everything he talks about in the book. And realistically, that whole concept that the popcorn is for all intents and purposes free is something that underlined my whole activities at the Speedrome and what we did to try to make additional money there. There were a lot of other things we employed, but unfortunately, the beer bucket was not something to be proud of, or at least not something to make money from. As we proceed down the road here, I want to make sure that you understand that Tom Deery and these videos that you saw were very much part of what the Deery family was accumulating in their inventory and in their closet space on the history of the racetrack over all the years that they ran the racetrack, and frankly, all the family were involved at one time or another. The key to this whole situation is that it is a family operation. And the fact that he was a devout Catholic, and he had 8 children, 7 boys, and then a girl. So realistically, he had a family that were built in for a racetrack because they all worked through those elements of putting that racetrack together and keeping it profitable.
Cheap labor.
I'm going to call on Chuck to tell you how Hugh Deery related to those family members who gave them an opportunity to make a career in automobile racing, just picking up the key pieces of information that he had about what was important around racing. Every one of the sons, in some way, left that racetrack to move on to other worlds of auto racing, both small tracks and big tracks. And realistically, it all came from what this man, Hugh Deery, produced. I'm privileged to be able to introduce Chuck Deery, who is the seventh son, the final son of 7. There is a daughter, but he was the youngest of the males, right, Chuck?
No, I was the 7th child. I was the favorite too, but my brother Dave here, he's number 8, and sister Sue, she 5 or 4th in the list. Gunner, Ted, Jack, Tom, Sue. So she was 5. So, yep, they're all of us. In talking to my father, in speaking with, representing my whole family here, we were educated from day one about operating a racetrack. And my father and mother made us learn everything there was about it and knew what the purpose was. On the entertainment side, he knew what product we were selling at the racetrack. But more importantly, when we had those valuable customers come to the gate, you know, make sure the box office was nice, the fast change, they could get in quickly, they were greeted with you know, the ticket takers and Tom's 3-piece leisure suit. It was important that they were there, but also how much can we extract financially from these folks while they're here? Because we have such a short window to make money, we have such a limited avenues to generate income, and so how much can we make our concession lines faster? And how do you, the products that you're selling, are you getting the best deal for hot dogs? Are you getting the best deal for buns? The bucket deal, my dad was, I don't know how he found this stuff, but he bought a semi-load of plastic buckets. And they were popcorn buckets, they were beer buckets. They said everything from quench gum on them to whatever. And essentially he was saving 4 or 5 cents, whatever it was, per serving. But you multiply that out and you just run the math on everything he did. And his mind was always working on how to calculate and generate some extra revenue and save as much money as you can. And then you roll that over to the competitive side of things, with doing things with the competitors. You know, he developed the so-called Rockford rules. He took out, and Tom made me want to correct me on this because Tom's much older than I am. He ran the math on running super late models at that time back then, and saw what the cost was, and saw what he was paying them. And if he developed another late model division, the fans really are not going to know the difference between 1 second on the racetrack or 2 seconds. But he was able to reduce the cost of racing. He knew that he was going to lose 40% of the crowd or 50% of the crowd, but wasn't going to have to pay 60% more. So by changing over to the Rockford style rules, he was making 10% more through the gate. And that's kind of stuff that just rolled over to other things. And of course, being in the entertainment business, there was the chain race and the outhouse race and the different novelty races that the Rockford Speedway used to have. The steak and potatoes of our sport were, you know, racing, but you needed to change it up every so often, every week, so we would do different events and try to get as many different people involved in the sport. He started a high school division way back then, to get kids involved in the high school. Street drag or spectator drags was another very popular event. He probably stole 90% of the ideas from workshops that he went to, but took them and just made them work better or work for Rockford Speedway, and then would share that with everyone else. And he's had failures too, but you got to step up to the plate and swing a couple times. They're not all going to be home runs, but it works out. You know, the trailer races, which are huge across the nation, it came out of that. Like, what can we do different to draw new people to the racetrack and get some more, and make our business successful, make some money in this game, because it's a tough game to be in. So I don't know if that's what I was supposed to cover, but I covered a lot there.
Well, that's, but everything we know about Hugh Deery is pretty much out on the table, I think, based upon what people might read in the excerpts. I want to make an announcement. The actual book, the Hugh Deery book, is down here on the front table. There was actually only 8 finished copies of this book. And they were generously, that book was made available to me. It really was a key to being able to put together this kind of tribute, because so much of what he said in the meetings that I attended and learned from were not available, and I had forgotten a great deal of things. But realistically, going to that book recorded in relatively rough English that most of you have pointed out all of these things he had talked about and taught me in the business of running the racetrack. One of the things that we understand now, based upon Hugh Deery's book, is the fact that the racing comments that he made at meetings like this were not a speech as such. They were a dialogue with the audience. And we're going to continue that in this event as we go down the road here today. So if you have a question, like whether or not Hugh Deery ever spanked any of his children, or whether or not he ever disagreed with them, if you have questions like that, or any other question, for any of the people up there on the panel, by all means, speak up. Hold your hand up and we'll turn it over to you.
If you ever went to the Navy Speedway that Deery's were involved in, you notice most of our buildings were battleship gray. And there's a reason, because we would, for my dad, we would buy all the cheap paint we could get from paint stores, whatever, and you mix it in a bucket and throw a gallon of black paint into it, and it turns into battleship gray. And it was just one of the, what he saved on the painting, and we still use it today, is the battleship gray paint. So, that just a side story, I guess. Yes, sir.
Anybody have any questions before we move on here about Hugh Deery or how he related to the family? I think this is an important part for those of us who ran a racetrack and had to relate to family members that helped in our race programs and helped in keeping the racetracks alive. Anybody who have any question, by all means, hold your hand up and we'll have someone here to give you a microphone and let you hear the question. Let us hear the question.
I thought one of the funny things in the book was that the importance of driving your perimeter fencing and then figuring out where people were sneaking in. And I think you covered it in like the second or third deal, but basically if the grass is trampled underneath the fence, you break up a beer bottle and mix it in with gravel, and then the person that came to you that was all cut up, you know who was sneaking under. And then if the fence was pushed down on top, you'd add barbed wire, and then the person that came to you because they ripped their shirt, what have you, you knew who was sneaking in. I just travel fence lines, I don't do the beer bottles, but it is interesting because it is important. People are going to sneak in, and the telltale signs, and some of that, cutting the ketchup with water, and when Lou Conti challenged the delivery guy about adding water to the meat, and just all those things. It's just, like Chuck said, it's down to the penny to figure out how to make money at the racetrack.
If you read our excerpts, you saw that we put a warning in there that if you're going to put broken glass in the bottom of a hole that somebody's going to be invited to dig through, that you better not brag about, laughing about it in something you write and give to the local prosecutor. That's one of the lessons we learned. You can't do quite everything that Hugh Deery did, because if you're going to do that kind of thing, you better not tell people how you laughed about it when it was over. But as we move along here, we want to be able to make sure that you know that we are looking for your response to these things that you had to say, and as learning as much from you as you might be able to learn from the people up here. The second person that we're going to introduce is Bob Wente, the fellow with the dirt track. And that again, Bob has a very wide world of sports for which he's been responsible over the years. His activities way exceed the generalization of being a racetrack promoter. I'm going to turn it over to Bob Wente to talk about how Hugh Deery impacts racing on dirt just as much as it does on asphalt.
Well, I think I'm here. Anyway, I want to thank John for putting this together, and hopefully you come away with at least one piece of information you can take back and really sink your teeth into. And as a young man back then, I listened to Tom and Chuck and all of them. I listened to their dad speak one time at an RPM Promoters Workshop Monthly, and unfortunately, he passed away shortly thereafter that. And they carried his work through those promoter workshops, every time they would have them in December in Reno and in Daytona in February. But, you remember 40 years ago, what he talked about was fan engagement. And that's what you see today, fan engagement, whether you go to a minor league baseball team, now the St. Louis Cardinals, they all try to get the fans involved. And that's another thing I got into a discussion with the other night about stage racing in NASCAR. Why are they doing that? And sports betting. Well, the thing about it is it engages a person for a shorter period of time, and then they reboot and they go for the second one. So this is all part of the fan engagement process. So whether you have a dirt track or an asphalt track or whatever, you just try to keep the fans involved in the thing, and fan engagement was the most important thing. To contradict John's beer theory here, I will tell you this. Fans will buy in a can. You can't do a draft because it takes too long to pour the draft, believe me. But if you sell cans, you just keep them cold, put them in ice. The biggest canned beer you can have. I think 24 ounces is it gives you a good price point. You can buy it at a good price because they don't sell many of them, so the distributors want to get rid of them. But, anything above 16, 24 ounces is good. And I said, draft beer, yeah, you make a lot of money on it, but there's a lot of waste because you got to keep the cooler cold. You can't have any differentiation in temperature there, and the cans are much easier to store, in the long run. And they will buy 24-ounce cans, believe me. And but I bought Tri-City Speedway. I was a racer. One of the things that I came away with from Hugh Deery, and to this day, and John even remarked on it, I never went to the pits. Absolutely never. That was, there was nothing good about me going to the pits. I was either going to get attacked, or complained about, or shot, or whatever, until the race was over, and then we all became friends again. But, if you walk away with one thing, stay out of the pits. Let your people run the program. If there's a mistake, let them handle it. You stay away from it. That's number one. That would be something to walk away from. And, as a dirt track, we did a lot of different goofy things. You saw them as they walked in. Well, I had a Pepsi sponsorship where we had the little guy from his name? Coda. Coda from, I'm sorry. I'm getting old now, I can't remember nothing. I got that CRS. And we had Coda sitting on our ticket stand, entering people to come in the pits. The other thing I took away from there was Stu Deery and Stu Doty and Hugh Deery, okay? So pardon me for my confusion. But the intermission part, I read that back years and years ago, and I quit having intermission. Because number one, the concession lines get killed when all people are released. They come down to the concession. They will come down, if they're a late model fan, they'll come down during the modified race or whatever, but it keeps everything moving at a good pace. And that's one of the things I brought away from RPM after going there for all these years. And, you know, and don't get me wrong, I mean, I did major events too. I did 50 World of Outlaw events in my life. I did USAC midgets and sprint cars. I did monster trucks. I had Megathoris. He came in here and blew up a car. That's a real funny story. That's the guy, the dinosaur that comes out and blows the fire and blows up the car. Well, these guys forgot to get all the gas out of it. And it blew up. And everybody thought, hey, that's great. I know that ain't part of the show, you know? And we did that. And we've done, you know, between the monster trucks and demolition derbies. But at the same time, they all have their own little clique. And the first time I did a demolition derby, you know, this is a race car guy doing a demolition derby. And, you know, they have their own little circle, and I had more guys in the stands than I had in the pits because they wanted to see if I was a straight up guy or whatever. Well, I had 6 cars, and it was the 4th of July, it was a beautiful night. I had fireworks to go that night, and people love fireworks, whether it was baseball, whether it was racing, they love the fireworks, okay? Not all the time, about once a month. And so I go to have a driver's meeting with them. I said, no, guys, I said, here's the deal. You're all going to come away with here with a little money, so just go out and have fun. And at the end of the night, you all have something to take home. They go out in the first race, and these two, and the racetrack's all, you muddy it up, it's a dirt track, but you got to muddy it up really bad so they don't build up too much speed. And these 2 guys square off like 2 bulls, and boom, I got 2 guys, now I'm down to 4 cars. And it's only like 7:30, it's still bright out. And so the other guys are all, I said, like, cool it, man, you guys just got to kind of stroke it through. So we get through that, and my guys, we had these factory stock cars, they were sitting out back. They were like little Pintos and stuff like that. These guys were all at the beer stand. They go, hey, I go, you guys got to help me out. He goes, what do you want to do? I go, can you go out and get into the factory stocks and do some rollover contests? Oh, yeah, man, that sounds cool. I'd love to do that. You know, so these guys all get on their helmets. They go out and they're doing rollover contests so we can have the main event to the demolition derby and then do the fireworks. Well, here it is. They get done with the demolition derby final, and it's still kind of dusk, okay? Well, I had a little intermission just so it could get dark. It finally gets dark. We do the fireworks. They shoot off the fireworks, and everybody's leaving a little after 9, thinking, oh, that was a great show. We loved it. You know, they weren't there till midnight or whatever. Everybody left out of there a little after 9 o'clock on the 4th of July and had a great time. And here we have 2 hours worth of entertainment from 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock. You know, so it don't have to be a long, drawn-out show. And at the same time, the people were involved because of the guys crashing and that kind of thing. So my history covered a lot of things, and a lot of it came from going to the promoter workshops. And at the end of the day, after 20 years, my wife and I, we started the BVRA, which was the Bob and Vicky Racing Association. And I gathered all this information from being at these seminars and stuff like this. But we ended up selling memberships we had to our racers. And we had about 250 racers in all the classes. We sold them all a membership, but the membership included at that time, now I'm going back 20 years, it all included a $100,000 participant accident policy, okay? And at that time, everybody just blew off insurance like it didn't mean nothing. Well, they found out that it does have a value. But we tied that into their membership, and they got a reduced pit pass rate versus the other guys who didn't. But we ended up having our own racing association at our own racetrack, controlling all our own stuff, controlling all our own purses, and at the end of the day, the back gate paid the purse. And where that comes from, the first promoter workshop I ever went to, Robert Lawton, who's been around for as long as dirt, told me, he says, if you're paying more person, you're taking in the back gate, you're paying too much. And that just kind of stuck with me. So after 20 years, I was taking all the persons coming to the back gate, and that's where you're hanging on to everything else in the course of the operation. But, you know, there was a lot of things with the dirt track we did. Like I said, but the most important thing is what you can do to get your fans involved, get them into it, just like you see at other major sporting events that you go to. And I hope that I've answered some of your questions and given you some ideas to take home.
Any questions about how you can have some fun on dirt? Yes.
What is the one key fan engagement activity that crossed over for your racing as well as your baseball promotion? Or was there?
I mean, what event versus the
What
risk?
fan engagement activity? Were there any parallels? What was a successful parallel between the two?
You know, one of the things I did, I hope I answered your question, so I had a two-seater late model, okay, and fans would pay $50 to ride in the late model, and we'd only take like 4 or 5 a night, you know, during time we had, okay, and that seemed to bring people in. I was telling John earlier, the biggest disappointment in that was when I had the idea, and I'm going to put this late model together, I came to this show, and with the vendors, shock absorbers, steering wheels, whatever you gotta have to put a race car together, and they looked at me like I was a redheaded stepchild. And the only people that helped me at that time was Hoosier Racing Time, okay? And they took me to Terry took me to all the booths and introduced me, and they still looked at me. I'm like, and as I went home that day, and I'm like, you know, dude, I go, if I'm not having races, we don't have racers, and you're not selling those shocks, okay? And they just, the vendors out there, I hope there might be some in this room, I don't care anymore, but they would not help me to put this project together. I ended up footing 90% of the bill myself to put this race car out there, but the guys racing on my track all bought parts for their own cars, whether it be a modified, whether it be a late model, sprint car, all of them, you know, all these guys, and these guys out here, meaning in this floor, they better start helping the track operator so that he can, I'm getting off your question. Okay?
That's okay, it's interesting.
They better
Partnerships are important.
Pardon me?
Partnerships with vendors are important.
I know, and the vendors just look at the track operator like, I mean, you got all these guys going up and down the aisle begging for this, begging for that, but yet the track operator walks up and is like, you know, and he blows you off, you know, rather than engage with you and say, what are you trying to do? What can I do to help? And it's not going to cost them any money, because like all you're asking for is a part. You know, you're not asking them to write a check. And at the same time, the guys that are buying stuff from them are the same guys at your racetrack. So that's one thing I had to get out, you know, because I came away from the show that one day and I was really frustrated. Any other question? I answered it? I hope.
Somebody else?
Got one back in the back.
Thank you. This might be a little bit more of an observation that leads into a question. I'm 33 years old, and I live in Rome, Georgia. If anyone has ever, Rome Speedway down there, bless their hearts for shutting down. But the one thing that shocks me is I'm a fan of racing. I never get marketed to, correct? It seems like it's tough to market maybe to a younger generation. They're constantly distracted. And there's something about my friend group, my friends, everybody. It seems like if we knew more about races that were happening, I think we'd all be excited to go and experience it. And my question, and I think this even leans into the correlation between maybe promoting in baseball and promoting in short track racing. Are there experiences you think that you could bring people in to know that there's a track nearby for the first time for a family, a young family, where whether it's, I see beer festivals that are hosted at a racetrack or some sort of music or a food festival, something like that. But like, I guess my question would be, is there an opportunity, you think, to bring in a younger crowd by the experience first, and then they kind of get hooked into racing because now they know this is an available entertainment for a small family?
Can I answer that? I don't know if this will get this thing working. I can answer that. The guys that, is it on? Okay, I'm sorry. I get blown away because I've outlived my time, okay, because they'll bring a race into St. Louis. I'm from the St. Louis market. I won't see a thing about it. I mean, today. I won't see it on television. I won't hear it on radio. And I'm like, where are they marketing this? Well, it's all on Facebook, or it's here or there. But when you go to Facebook in those places, you're talking to the choir. Okay, so how do I want to get new people there? Okay, how do you reach outside? How do I introduce them to that? Okay, and you just have to some way, and don't say give away tickets, because that makes a ticket free, and the one thing you want to walk away from, free has no value. Okay, free has no value. And whether they buy one and get one free, that's a different story, where they can, the adult can buy one and take their son. And ironically, today, at lunchtime, I was with a guy from Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and when they had management change here a few years ago, they said 5 and unders, they took away the 12 and under and made 5 and unders free. Well, that was a disaster. Well, now, 15 and unders free. So therefore, an adult can buy a ticket and take his child, and that part is free. But at least they bought a ticket to get them in. And you're going to find there are people, well, not my age, but you know, a little older than you, your age. You know, they're going to have kids, and I have 2 son-in-laws, and they go to the races a couple times a year, and their kids absolutely love it. Now, they don't go every week, because they'll go 2 times a year, but at least through the monster trucks on TV, through the racing on TV, you know, they're kind of introduced to it that way. Plus, their dad's a race fan too. Not ate up, but he watches it. You know, he'll watch baseball. They're general sports fans. But the thing about it is the television can reach that child, that younger person, or whoever it may be, to give them an interest, to search out, have a friend that, you know, there is an opportunity somewhere to buy one ticket, get one free, okay? Just anything like that. Because right now, most marketing, with the Facebook and all that, is geared to the choir, you know? You're talking, and that's all I got to say about that.
I can, whether this is my opinion. The mom, dad, and 2 kids, if you want to get them to the races, you go through the kids.
That's what I was about to mention. I think you're not marketing to the race fan anymore. You're marketing to the child that gets excited and bugs their mom or dad to go, hey, there's an event. There's something going on here that is exciting to me. And parents are, I'm sure, are always looking for ways to entertain their kids or have their kids be excited to even ask them to go do something, right?
The fastest way to parents' pocket is through their kids. So if you get the kids there, obviously, and plant that seed while they're young. Well, also, I have no interest in trying to get an 18 to 25-year-old to the racetrack, because all they're interested in is cheap alcohol and sex. And you cannot beat that, no matter what kind of marketing you do. But you can get them to the races if it's a social event. It has to be a happening deal. And sometimes oval track racing doesn't work. Great example of this with the street drags. We do at lacrosse and at Madison. It's a happening event for the kids to come out and participate a little bit. So you can get them there, but you may not get them for specifically the oval track racing. So, you just got to be smart on how you market the stuff too. And then, essentially, I think the perfect fan going to your grandstand is about 30 years old because they have some money and you can extract a little bit more from them, a little bit more spendy. But it's a tough nut. And of course, no two events are the same. You gear up some of your events for more of a family orientated, and some of the hardcore race events are for your hardcore race fans. So that's how you would have to set up your marketing. I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's like setting the hook, because once, I feel like if you get someone to come once, they're going to come multiple times. And yeah, I guess I'll leave it with that, but just an observation. I appreciate your input.
We got a question in the back there.
Back room. And this is for the last 2 days here. In this room, we've learned all about different ways to promote your event socially, through social channels, through the Facebook, some incredible things that you can do now to reach your audiences, to reach new audiences. That stuff is amazing, and it really is a lot of the future. But there's part of this business that I think still gets lost, and I'm going to be the guy that's going to point back to that book on that table up there that talks about the shoe leather part of this book, of this business, and that's flyers, and posters, and getting your information out in your community. 50 posters put in 50 gas stations or convenience stores, flyers at different events, does an incredible amount of that ground, I guess they have a term for it, I can't remember what it is, but guerrilla marketing still has an impact in our sport, because we're small businesses, generally in small towns. Now, not dismissing anything to do with Facebook or the social part that we've learned about in the last 2 days. There's some vendors out there that can take care of you very reasonably and touch that market. But for goodness sakes, do not forget the guerrilla side. And there's some great things. Bobby mentioned the 2-for-1s. You know what, the biggest commodity you guys have is empty seats. So if you can't find something to fill them, then come up with ways that you can. And your currency is your ticket. That's what you have. You can use your ticket as currency, and whether it's giving it away or doing it through promotions. Just some ideas.
In the front row up here today, we have 2 gentlemen who have inherited the racetrack that I owned for 20 years, Indianapolis Speedway. And one of the things that we created at the Speedrome, pretty much based on Hugh Deery's ideas, was bicycle racing for the children. It was started with big wheel races in various age groups, and there were kids at age 2, 3, 4, 5 went out on the racetrack and actually raced on that racetrack that they saw the race car involved. Today, there were other age groups from all the way up to I think 15 or 16. But today, the race drivers that those 2 gentlemen have at their racetrack, for the most part, for people who began in big wheel racing or bicycle racing on the racetrack at the Indianapolis Speedrome, and were so imbued with the activity that was going on there that they've continued. In fact, at least 2 or 3 of the champions that they had this year came out of the big wheel races that I had way, way, way back. And those kids had fun there, and they never forgot it. And that was something that they all got a trophy when they walked out the door. The first 2 or 3 got big trophies, but everybody went home with a trophy, one of those participation trophies, remember? But that big wheel race or bicycle races created the interest that is now being projected at the Indianapolis Speedrome for these gentlemen who are owning that racetrack today. And it all grew out of that involvement, of involving the people, the kids who saw that activity on the racetrack, and they absolutely were thrilled to be able to get out there in their big wheels or bicycles. So that was nothing more than, yeah, it was intermission time. There was a lot of people who went to the beer or got popcorn or whatever the case. But those kids had a great time on that racetrack, and they came back, and they've come back strong in this generation of race drivers in that racetrack. One of the people we're going to be talking about now, Ron Drager. And Ron Drager, at the time I owned the Indianapolis Speedrome, had an organization involving traveling series involving figure eight racing. Figure eight racing was a key to his activities at Flat Rock Speedway. Now, realistically, in the world of motorsports, figure eight racing is somewhat inch or two above a demolition derby. It was the key at the Indianapolis Speedrome. It was the basis of putting people in the grandstands, not because there were crashes, but because there were opportunities for crashes that didn't happen in most cases. But they did occasionally happen, and people responded, and maybe came back to see another one the next time. I don't know. But I know that this man, Ron Drager, actually had at that point, from his Flat Rock Speedway, the activities of figure eight racing, and he was one of the few people who, if you notice the pictures of the Rockford Speedway, there was a figure eight race program, or figure eight course there. We took our traveling series from the Speedrome and raced at Rockford Speedway. They had a good crowd. We didn't make $100,000 for Hugh Deery, but we did have, or for his wife in that case, but we did have a good crowd. People did appreciate it. It wasn't the racing of that you saw on TV at Daytona or Talladega or Charlotte or any place else, but it was an entertaining form of racing, and it has remained the key to the activities at Indianapolis Speedway and the profitability of it. He can tell you why that figure eight racing came to an end as far as his group was concerned, but they were keys to supporting the 3-hour endurance race, which we ran at the end of the season for the figure eight cars, which became my $100,000 race at the Speedrome. Not really $100,000, but it was certainly the profit maker. And it is today, continued to be in this, the most significant 3-hour endurance race that I think anybody could ever run. But realistically, that whole concept really was created. Among other things, Hugh Deery provided my very first year that I raced the 500 lap or the 3-hour endurance race. Hugh Deery sent his champion figure eight driver to the Indianapolis Speedrome to compete. You never saw the guy again, but I've always appreciated the fact that he sent that driver to us to be a part of our race program, which was something that is totally unheard of at that day, to run 3 hours on the figure eight. But I'm interested in what Ron Drager can tell us about how that Flat Rock program, how his figure eight racing relates now to being an official at NASCAR. I'm going to introduce Ron Drager to give you an insight into the big leagues of auto racing and how Hugh Deery's ideas are significant to putting on a show in the big league.
Thanks, John. So first of all, the entire short track industry in our country owes a debt to the Deery family. Hugh passed away in '84. My grandfather passed away in '81. My grandfather and grandmother were buddies with Bill Frank Sr. and Annie France. And they used to go down and help put the beach races on at Daytona. And so there's this lineage and this sort of a generational came to an abrupt stop when guys like Hugh Deery and John Markham passed away. And it was what they did that sort of got us to that point that we're reflecting on today. So John put these excerpts together and emailed them out, and it was all electronic and digital, and of course I print them all out because I don't do electronic and digital. And I read through there, and I was going to just like make a note here or there, put a sticky note here or there, and I couldn't get past more than a page or two before there was something significant enough in those pages that it was like, okay, there's a note, right? There's another note. And so when we go to the RPM workshops and we walk out of there with a full page of notes, we feel pretty good about ourselves. We have twice a year, we have Michigan promoters, opportunity to come together in a room and just sort of share best practices or things that didn't work. You walk out of there with a full page of notes. That's a mighty thick document right there. And we got like maybe 5% of that, and I've got a full page of notes, just that. So we can bring these things forward. Hopefully we're already doing a fair amount of them, but I did make some notes. So here's one that's gonna hurt everybody in here who thinks that the best thing we can do is have just kick-ass racing, right? Racing's gotta be great. Gotta have a lot of race cars, gotta be fast as hell, and they have to be just the greatest thing. And what Hugh Deere said was, it's not just staging a parade of cars running in a circle, it's entertaining people. So, if I want to watch race cars go in a circle, I can sit at home and I can watch the rock stars of the sport. The people racing at our racetrack, most likely, a high percentage of the people who bought a ticket to come and watch do not know who they are. That's not what our competition is. What we have to do is give people a reason to be there. If I stand at the bottom of the grandstands on Saturday night at Flat Rock and we run our figure eight, and I look up and it, depending on your experience of watching figure eight racing, because we damn near never wreck. It's about timing, and the driver knows when they turn off the corner, they know exactly where they're going to go between the other cars. They've already figured this out. So we very rarely wreck. But they're going right at one another, and the casual fan who's looking for some fun is thinking, my God, they're going to wreck. As John alluded to, there's a possibility they might. And if you look up in those people's faces, we have engaged them. Believe me, they are super focused on that. That's meaningful to them. They're going to walk out of there knowing that was something that excited them. That was something that engaged them. We are really proud of the big races that we put on. We run an ASA National Tour Glass City 200, and we run a Joy Fair 100 and a Stanley 150, and all the high-powered Outlaw late models, and we pay a lot of money to win. And 7 consecutive sellouts at Flat Rock Speedway. Got to stop selling tickets. It goes back 4 years now for the school bus figure eight. So, it hurts my pride a little bit because we're going to take our ARCA cars to Daytona in February and run, before the Xfinity race, the day before Daytona 500. It's going to be live on Big Fox. And our most successful event that will run all year is going to be School Bus Figure 8 at Flat Rock. Well, that's not a motorsports event. No, it's not. But it sure entertains people. And it entertains people to the point that we don't have any place to park them. And we can't get them to the bathroom. And we can't get them to the concession stand. That's what we have. We got to re-engage. We got to, go back to the entertainment part of this. we want to have great racing, and we want people to bring race cars, come into the pits, and come out and race with us. But if we're interested in selling tickets, we got to entertain people. And so I won't belabor this too much, but the flagman, these are all notes from the excerpts of John. The flagman is the focal point of everybody in the grandstand. So if your flagman is just sort of holding the flag out and doing that, and not doing a double checkered and flipping them back and forth and making a bit of a spectacle of being a flagman, that's missing an opportunity to entertain. If your people are not uniformed and wearing, all synchronized, and it looks like it's professional, it looks like it's clean and neat and efficient, then we're missing an opportunity to entertain. If we don't have some kind of specialty food product that we sort of promote as a specialty, we're missing an opportunity to entertain. If our pre or post race is sort of blah, and it's not really patriotic, and we're not recognizing a military hero that's in our crowd, and we're not having some fireworks here and there, we're missing an opportunity to entertain. If the public address announcer is not educating the people about what's going on here, and we're race number 3 of 12, and the driver of that race car has 6 kids, is 52 years old, works at the Ford plant in Woodhaven, we're not entertaining our people. Those are people driving those race cars. They're not just race cars going in a circle. Put people in connection with what was going on the racetrack. The ticket taker, we saw that. The ticket taker is like the first impression. Ticket seller, ticket taker, first impression. That's going to sort of set the tone for the night for the fan. And so I'll accelerate this and get to the end of it, but these specialty races, these novelty races, as they were referred to by Hugh Deery, and what he would do is he would buy cars that were like an inch away from going to the junkyard at the least amount that he could pay, because they didn't need to run for about 10 minutes. So it didn't matter what kind of terminal problem they had. If that car could last 10 minutes, it was worth investing in. So he would buy them for $50 or $100. And today, we are following that concept. But those cars are now $500 or $1,000, because that's what you got to pay for something that's only going to last even that long. But we're doing it, and we are walking the walk that Hugh Deery taught us. So we have passenger vehicles that, Steve Sinclair, plug your ears, that don't have roll bars in them, because we're never going to roll one over, because all we're doing is having fun with them. And so we have a reverse race. Well, so what? So what is watch people in the grandstands when you put 2 race cars out there running in reverse for 1 lap. It's entertaining. We made a connection with them. We do the plywood race. Our goal here is to get the local lumber company to sponsor the plywood race. And you can run a car from any division that you want, including these Roadrunner cars, and the driver holds the plywood, and the driver can go as fast as they want, but when the plywood flies off, then you're out of the race. So how fast do you want to go? How hard can you hold it down? When all the plywood's off, the race is over. That's not high-tech racing, but it's sort of a kick in the ass. It's sort of fun, and people like it. Second place race. The winner, the guy that gets the prize money and the trophy is the person who finishes second. Well, if you've ever seen everybody running, trying to be as close to first as possible, but not first, and then come up to the finish line where the checkered is waving and they all stop and run over one another, that's the second place race. Race car bowling. 10 55-gallon plastic barrels in the form of a bowling pin at the end of the alley. Race car, lower division race cars, factory stocks, street stocks, run them toward that area, have an area wetted down, cut the car to the right. It's got to hit with the rear end of the car, or it's not a legit bowling and knock as many of those barrels over as you can. Race car bowling. Mother-in-law race is, again, you gotta have a roadrunner car, you can't do this with a race car. Put somebody in the back seat, put the driver with the grocery bag over their head so they can't see, and let the person in the back seat tell them how to drive. One lap. We have lost racetracks that it's heartbreaking to lose Rockford Speedway because of how hard the Deery family worked their whole lives for that racetrack. Columbus Motor Speedway in Ohio, we lost that racetrack. The Knuckles family invested their entire working careers into that. I-80 Speedway, the Kosiski family. Irwindale Speedway, Tim Huddleston. So property value and the cost of doing business and the relative success that we're all having, we're losing racetracks that will not be replaced. And it's almost like it's like a crisis where we gotta get after this. We gotta figure this out. We gotta work as hard as we can at it to keep this thing going. So I don't know that I have helped you at all, but I'm telling you, I feel passionately about it. And we're going back 40 years or so, and it's still relevant. It's still relevant. A lot of that stuff is. So that's all I got.
One thing that I feel very strongly about, and it played a very big part in the fact that I ever got involved in auto racing at all, is the fact that what happens after the race is as important as what happens in the race. Those people who take their families back into the pit area to go and look at those cars and meet the drivers leave a lasting impression on that whole family, both the adults and the children. There's a tremendous amount of risk, safety-wise, that we have to be careful. And we have a rule at the speed run that none of the track officials could leave until the last car was out of the pit area, because we felt it was a responsible thing to make sure that we were as careful watching for the safety of the children in the pit area afterwards as it was watching for the drivers on the racetrack. But realistically, in terms of salesability of the future programs at the speed room or any other racetrack, the exposure of going into the pit area and seeing those cars up close that they just saw out on the racetrack. You and I have seen a lot of racing in a period of time. It doesn't mean that much to us, but particularly when you're a 6 or 7 or 8 or 9-year-old child, it makes a tremendous amount of difference. My interest, personal interest, grew up riding my bicycle to the 16th Street Speedway, which is across the street from, in my day, across the street from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Walking through the pit area after that race is the reason I'm here today. Because there was something about that whole experience that was totally unrelated to what went on the racetrack in terms of racing. But it made such an impression on me just to be up close to the people who were putting on the show. And that's an important part. You must consider how effective that, not only to involve the people to go into the pit area, but also to work with some of those drivers to be good Samaritans, to be able to have cards to pass out to their people, the people who come up and ask for them, or even maybe to give them a little extra dollars here and there to take care of them with other little mementos that might be important for the child to take home and keep as a souvenir. Not to go to the souvenir stand, to get that little thing free out of the pit area. So all of these things, we unfortunately, as I look out on the world of auto racing at this point, We've all become very concerned about the mechanics of auto racing, and we're all concerned about the size of the engines and the cost of the tires and mechanical devices that involved in the racing program. But the heart of the thing is, as Hugh Deery tried to tell us a long time ago, that we're not selling all that hardware. We're in the business of selling those feelings that people leave that racetrack with. That's the key. And if they're going to come there again, as Hugh Deery says, you've got to give them their money's worth. And that money's worth includes being able to take those people safely into the pit area and see the players that put on the show for them on the racetrack. I can't emphasize that enough because it was so important. My own personal interest in automobile racing. Without that, I wouldn't be here standing today. After we finish here, or as we get close to the shut-off time, are there other questions that might come up or any suggestions from the audience at this point based upon things that you do? That's what that was one of Hugh Deery's strengths, was he was able to tell us. Go ahead.
My name is Dean Case. I work with the Society of Automotive Engineers. And I don't know how many of you are aware of Formula SA and Baja SA. There's 200 plus collegiate teams around the country building race cars. And most of them are aspiring to get into the sport. They're future customers. We've successfully teamed up in Southern California with the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach, where the students originally asked if they do a parade lap, and I said, if they say yes, I'll talk them out of it. And they said, no, we want you to talk them into it. I said, experimental vehicles, student drivers, concrete walls. No upside here. But I can get you something more important. I think I can get you display space in the expo. But you have to work for it, not as charity. Promote ticket sales. So Jim McCallion is now a huge fan of working with our student groups. We have 17 schools competing and promoting ticket sales for an event. And most of you are probably, any track owner is probably near a college that has an engineering program. These are people who could deliver those posters around, where's the gentleman talking about posters, could help on promotions that you don't have to pay. You have to give them, what they're looking for, which is exposure within the sport in a way to learn. So there's opportunities to do that. Tomorrow at noon, Ian Lane from SEMA and I are giving a little panel discussion about bridging industry and the academics, where there's something that can be said for it. So I know a bunch of 18 to 25-year-olds who do want to go to races, and they're out there, and they're regional all over the country. So there's some opportunities to bring in a younger fan base. The student is part of a Society of Automotive Engineers, and there's two competitions. Baja SA for off-road vehicles, which would be perfect for a dirt track, and Formula SA, which the nature of those probably are static only in most of your tracks. I don't think I would advise putting them on there for No, they're not. There's been other competitions, but these two are international in scope. We have students go directly from Formula SA to working for Formula One teams and IndyCar teams and NASCAR teams. So this is a bridge on the technical side, but a lot of these teams also have a business component, so there are people who are interested in the business side of the sport. And those are kind of the unicorns who actually love racing, but have an academic background in marketing and promotions. And they're ones that, if you're near, any of you are near a local university has an engineering program, they probably are building one of these cars and you don't even know about it. Because they are not public events what we do. Our events for the students are strictly for the industry, is for industry to come and recruit talent. But they can be teamed up with local tracks and businesses for mutual benefit. Help get more butts and seats. And the students get, potential sponsors out of it and things like that. So there's opportunities out there. And just like, so noon in room 233 tomorrow if you want to come hear that.
Thank you for that answer. Chuck Deery has the High School Racing Association. They started that 3 or 4 years ago. They've now turned it into an academic letter. Explain more of that, Chuck, on your high school racing, how that's taken off.
Yeah, it's for our entry-level class. It's 6-cylinder cars, the bombers out there, the $500 cars you can get. And we realized that not all kids can run fast or throw a football. That want to be mechanically inclined, want to be involved in a sport. So we have very simple rules. We don't pay them anything, just a trophy. And we got our track, Madison, Toma, I think is involved in it. About 9 or 10 tracks now run them. And they run them 3-4 times a year. Track points, regional points. And our director for this was a former racer and started approaching some of the schools that the kids were coming from, and they turned it into a lettered sport at 3 of the high schools now. So it's a lettered sport, and we make the cars wear the color of the school and their team logo on it, or school logo on it. It's been, it hasn't grown as quickly as we thought it would. The only challenge that we have with any sport that involves kids, parents. And so we're figuring out the best way to, keep the parents under control and stuff, because we don't want it to be we want it to be a non-contact racing, which is nearly impossible. And but what is done is now we've got the local tech school gives out a scholarship. Jostens gives a championship ring to the overall champion. So it's gaining some legs, and it's nice to see new blood. The one thing you can really tell in the grandstands is the families wear the school colors, the team colors. So it's nice to see, who they're with and who they're with. So it's generating ticket sales for us and giving these kids an avenue to participate in the sport. And we have seen, I think this is our 4th year, and I think the kids that first started up now they've moved up to other divisions. So it's working as a farm league, sort of, and it's been successful. We kind of stole it from a track in California, but they were doing it with $50,000 late models, and we figured a $500 car was a better choice.
Question. Go ahead, back there.
Just to continue on that, it seems like a lot of schools are starting to do away with automotive programs, so are you running into issues with that, or are you seeing that maybe there's an opportunity to reintroduce automotive programs at the high schools?
Well, like you said, they're getting away from even the tech schools. Then the schools really don't want to be directly involved with it because of liability issues. So if they can offer letters, performance letters, as a lettered sport, we figure that's the best we're going to have for a victory. We also give the champion a banner that they can hang up in the school and what have you. But I don't know how you ever can cross over that bridge, because you're dealing with school boards and the thought of that. But this was the next best thing we could do, is just get them involved and the kids involved and bring the school name with them.
How do you work? Another question? There we go. Okay, go ahead.
So we have a Young Guns division at our racetrack. We've had it since 2006 or so. Started off as strictly 4-cylinder domestic vehicles, but obviously with 2024 comes technology, and these people know how to work their ways around it. What became 2 pushrod motors and Chevy Cavaliers are now, we're fighting dual overhead cams, we're fighting VTEC and stuff like that, and then the accessibility of those simple pushrod motors are just not there anymore. So in your 6-cylinder division that you've generated with this, how do you guys tech to make sure that the computers aren't being manipulated in any capacity in order to keep these things safe? Because our cars, even before we adapted to dual overhead cams and VTECs, but then moderated the inflow of air, these things were doing like 85, 90 mile an hour average speeds, which is just way too fast for teenagers. So do you have any recommendations on that, how you control that?
isn't that the question for every division we ever race at all our racetrack? The competitors are going to be doing whatever they can. But we just tack them the best we can. We keep them on DOT tires and just try to tack it the best we can. What we're going to see here, I think, in the next few years is the $600, $500 six-cylinder car is there's going to be less and less of them, and I think you're going to see SUVs coming in. I think it's going to be an SUV class within the next 3 or 4 years. We're going to start developing our own SUV entry-level class. I mean, you go to the junkyard and what's coming through there. The sedans are about done, and now it's becoming SUVs. So, but it's the same. Okay, so it doesn't have 4 doors like a sedan. It's a little bit taller, but it's still the same. It's a low-dollar entry-level car, and I think that's so critical for all racetracks that if you can have some low-dollar entry-level car to get people out of the grandstands and into the pits, and don't race them every week. You want to have them taste the fruit, and if they want to take it to the next level, they'll do it on their own. But you got to make that transition from the grandstands to the pits as easy as possible, and keep the cars, tech them the best you can. Like Ron mentioned, my dad buying cars. We buy, Monster Truck wants to destroy your car for $150 over scrap price plus 4 tickets to a race event. Drop it off at the speedway with your ticket with your title. So we have probably 25 spare cars at a time. And you see some people that have interest. Well, you know what? You want to go racing? Here, I have this car. Here's the rules. There you go. I'm like the Richard Childress of racing. Like 25 cars out there, but they end up getting their own car and be part of it. And once they're in the pits, and eventually a percentage of them are going to move up. So, and quite honestly, the best ticket selling divisions you have are your lower divisions. The race fans are going to watch your race cars. They're going to go all over, and that's 30% of your crowd, 40% of your crowd. It's the other 70%, 60%. You got to entertain them, and they like, as we all know, they like the spins and the action and the drama of those entry-level cars. I don't know if that answered your question, but there's one there.
Any other questions before we adjourn? In that case, I thank you very much for being here, and I hope that some of these ideas are things that we can use to keep our industry in business. Thank you very much.